You're listening to Bottomshelf Bitcoin. This is episode 54.
Relax. Enjoy your coffee. Mocha. Good morning, everyone. Take a chill pill. What is it? Mocha.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Bottomshelf Bitcoin, the podcast that puts Bitcoin knowledge in everyone's reach. It's a little different this week. I haven't had an episode in a while, and life's been pretty hectic, obviously, for everybody right now. If you're tuning in years later, this is going to seem really weird, but it is, right now when I'm recording this, it is March 20th of 2020. We are right in the middle of the COVID-19 coronavirus stuff going on. And so I thought, I try to keep this show personable. I try and keep it on a level that anyone can understand. And I try and find ways to make sure that it stays human. There's plenty of other podcasts that if you want to dive into the technical side of Bitcoin, that's there for you. But I like to make sure that we're focusing on how it relates to people. And so with that, we're kind of taking a different tack this week. I've got 3 kind of mini interviews on here on this episode. I talked with Brian Lockhart, who is in Seattle, very close to kind of ground zero of where this stuff started in the US. I talked with Josh of Bitcoin Beefsteak fame. He's in New York City right now, and just kind of what changes and things look like there and kind of how people are feeling there. And then I talked with Marshall, aka OGBTC on Twitter, and he is, among other people, working on a project to help 3D print and design some masks in anticipation of a shortage of N95 and other kind of protective masks. Not to necessarily be a full-on replacement for those things, but should it become necessary to look for something as a replacement, to do that kind of thing, and just kind of ways that he can help. So without further ado, I'm just going to jump into these interviews, and then I will catch you guys on the back end. All right, I'm on here with Brian Lockhart. Brian, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me, Josh.
Yeah, so you're kind of in the greater Seattle area, right? Which is kind of ground zero for this COVID stuff for America, right?
Yeah, like the very first case that was detected in America was from a guy that flew into Seattle from China, just do normal business stuff, I guess, or whatever. And then he started feeling sick up in a town called Everett, Washington, which is about 30 minutes north of Seattle. And he checked into hospital on like January 15th. And then and I think that the testing came back, and it was announced that the first U.S. case was in the U.S. like shortly after, like maybe like 17th of January. And that's what really got my attention, because I'd been watching it, of course, from a distance, like following the news on Twitter and seeing things going really bad in Wuhan, China. And so when you see that it's come both to the U.S. and then basically to like your neighborhood, you kind of really start paying attention. And Seattle's a super international town, and it's West Coast, very tech heavy, and there's just a ton of traffic back and forth between here and China, Japan, et cetera, for people that are either expats that live here now, but their families are back in China, and or they're just traveling back and forth for work. So there's just like a ton of international folks running around here. So I just knew that this was going to come to Seattle eventually. And then, you hear about that first case, and you start looking around like, well, geez, like, well, what are they doing about stopping the spread of this? Like, what are the odds of this getting out of hand? And, there's just not much being done about it, but what can you personally do about it? Nothing. And so now we're coming into February, and still no real specific new news. The guy that got tested had already been released from the hospital, said he's feeling better. And so you kind of think for a little bit, oh, okay, well, maybe this isn't happening over here. You see it taken off in other parts of the world, but it still hadn't really gotten any newsworthy attention here. That's just because it was happening, of course, just nobody was spreading the word about it. And then what really lit my fire was fire into my butt was I actually live in a town called Kirkland, Washington, which is like a suburb. It's called like the East Side area of Seattle, and it's like a bedroom community suburbs. But Evergreen Hospital and Life Care Nursing Home got in the news as having, oh my gosh, here's the first U.S. death, and that happened on I remember it Saturday, February 29th, and it hindsight being 2020, now the news is coming out that this hospital and nursing home had been noticing really extreme cases of pneumonia and above average number of like really violent flu patients coming in. But it didn't hit the panic button level of news until the CDC announced that, yep, got a guy that died at Evergreen Hospital, and that is 3 miles from my house. Like now it's like down even closer to Seattle, and then it's like, whoa, here it is. And then the next day, the Life Care Nursing Home story starts to come out, and that is 1 mile from my house. And that's unfortunately like a nursing home, so full of vulnerable elderly people, and you get one case in an environment like that, and it spreads rapidly, and that's where the deaths really started ticking up, like from 1 to 2 to 5 and 10, et cetera. It's just going out of hand now. So now we're like, when I first saw the news about the death, I didn't go into full panic quarantine or anything like that, but I did decide, okay, if we're supposed to take my kids out and meet some people to go bowling at a bowling alley nearby. And I'm like, wow, what are the odds of somebody that's been in contact with people that are infected by this being at this bowling alley? Pretty high. Like people run around a community, and it's just, that's how diseases spread. So I just made the call, like, nope, let's just, throw the flag on that and stay home. And that was literally the first of my efforts to just like pull back and kind of shelter in place at home. Schools
You
didn't
didn't
close.
wait, hang on. You didn't want to like put your fingers in a bowling ball and rent some shoes that 8,000 other people had.
Right.
I have qualms about bowling anyways. I'm just going to be honest with you
Yeah,
for
it
those
was
reasons, even
exactly.
before this.
It's like everyone goes to a bowling alley and you see the guy spraying the disinfectant into all the shoes that you're about to put on your feet. Like bowling alleys and cruise lines are gross even on a good day, and so there's no way I was going to go into that after hearing about this hairball crazy virus thing going on a mile away from my house. So it's like, nope, I think we're going to pass on that. And then so now we're in the next Monday is the first Monday of what is this now? This of March, and I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, like once they know for a fact that it's here and people are dying from it and it's got to be spreading, I really expected like they're going to throw a dome over Kirkland, just like kind of like seal us in and like try to contain the thing. And I was like, well, that's going to suck, but let's just get ready for it. And so I went out and did my shopping and got all ready to be bunkered down for a while. I thought the schools would be closed. Nope, that only happened this last Monday. I pulled my kids out that Monday anyway, and it was kind of weird, right? Because all of a sudden you're the tinfoil hat parent. That's
Right.
Some people were saying overreacting. I'm just like, no, I'm going to keep my kids home, and that went on for the first week was rough. Second week, more and more families are doing it, and then finally, by this point, it's starting to get more traction. More deaths are happening. Governor finally says close schools, et cetera, and now here we are. And so now Seattle's been in all schools closed for 1 week now. And yeah, it's kind of weird. Like I think I'm stuttering a bit on it because for me, this has been going on for 3 weeks. This is day 20 of quarantine for me. But the state of Washington really just threw the camera down a week ago. And it's weird to see the time lag. And now I'm at the same time, I'm watching all over the rest of the country and the world as it's starting to happen to various degrees in other cities. I think New York's kind of slamming on it pretty good. San Francisco is about to get hit harder, I believe. LA just went into more lockdown. The whole state of California happened last night, I believe. The governor said, everyone just stay home. And so it's just weird watching this like time delay of like lockdown happening in pockets across the country to various degrees. And there's, unknown benefit to this. We have hypothetical benefits that I really hope are going to show up, right? Because like the whole idea of doing these shutdowns is to stop the spread of the disease and to, like they say, flatten the curve so you don't crash the healthcare system. But in the meantime, we're starting to see here in Seattle like very real economic disruption. Like people are getting laid off from restaurants that have been closed. People are working from home, and even if you're at a tech job, you can do that, but you're not getting as much productivity out of it because especially if you've got kids at home, you're not going to be productive if you're working from home and you got to take care of an elementary school age kid and try to help them through their schoolwork, which is still being sent out. So like productivity is taking a hit, businesses are getting clobbered, and I think that Seattle is kind of this like what's happening here now is going to be happening in the rest of the country, and I don't know, but buckle up, I guess. Like, what can I answer for you? Like, for me, it's kind of weird because like I'm just kind of like up to my eyeballs in it, and it's not panicky. Like I am seeing now, like on Twitter, especially, huge lineups happening at the Costco's around here, and oh, that's a funny side note. So people don't realize this, but if you go to a Costco and you buy the Kirkland house brand, like Kirkland toilet paper or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
that's named after Kirkland, Washington, because like
Oh, really?
Because Costco's from Seattle, so like Kirkland is the name of that brand, but that's named after this town. And so I actually go to the Costco, one of the first Costco's ever here in Kirkland.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, so we don't actually have Costco here in my town. We have a Sam's, which is kind of the
Yeah,
Walmart version,
same
right? And
here.
we actually went by today. I mean, ordered online and then just dropped in and picked up, and we just had a couple of things we needed. But it was pretty busy, but not crazy busy. So where I'm at is like an hour or two outside of Houston,
Okay.
um, and so. Um, it's definitely less, there's definitely less traffic on the road and stuff, but it's not like nothing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird. So it's actually a college town. So what it looks like right now is how it normally looks during like Christmas break or summer vacation when all the students have gone home, I
That's a
would
really good
say.
way to put it. Yeah, I was kind of noticing the traffic stuff. Like I haven't been going out of my house all that much, but when I do, you kind of take notice of, oh, this feels like 5 a.m. on a Sunday morning traffic, and it's 10 o'clock on a Tuesday. That's a little weird. So
Right.
it's not like dystopian, everything shut down, and it's really bizarre because it's a beautiful Seattle spring day right now, and there's a lot of people, out walking around trying to like not walk close to each other, but there's a lot more people that are home from their office jobs or whatever, and kids are out of school. So if it weren't for the undertones and stress about worrying about all this and the economic damage too, it would actually be a really nice scene right now because there's all these kids running around playing, and it's weird. Like
Yeah.
the contrast is a little jarring.
Yeah. Yeah. You talked about the time delay. So for us, it was kind of one of those things like we didn't have it in Texas until I don't know, last week or confirmed, let's say in
Sure. Yeah.
Texas until I think last week maybe. And so pretty much all the schools here were on spring break. And it was kind of
Yeah.
like on the tail end of spring break, everybody starts bombarding you with the emails and the
Hmm.
things of like, which schools are shut. And basically all the schools here, both the like public K through 12 schools as well as the universities all went to, hey, we're going to put you on, you know, extended spring break week. And then after that, we're going online only. And at this point, they're pretty much all saying that they're probably going to be online only through the end of the year.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's definitely a delay from what you guys were doing.
And it's like it's a little surreal to watch like the same things playing out, but so far, both because we don't know for sure if it's effective or not, and just because human nature and government bureaucracy is being what they are, like I just seeing the same mistakes being made too. Like literally just before we got on here, I saw something about a Houston fire station. The entire crew is now in quarantine because one of them tested positive, and they don't know for sure where it came from. Did it happen because they weren't wearing enough protective gear, or because maybe they went into a situation where they had no idea whether the person was infected or not? And like, oh man, like we had this exact same thing happen on February 29th and March 1st up here in Kirkland, where the firehouse 2 blocks from my house is the one that got shut down. And I know a couple of those guys, and they were just going back and forth to this nursing home on calls. And if you think about it, nursing homes have calls all the time, right? It's just,
Yep.
it's a sad fact of life. And so they get a call to go pick up somebody at this nursing home, take them to the hospital, and they have no reason to believe it's coronavirus. So they just walk in with their normal gear. and boom, next thing you know, you've caught it. And so I think that's happening right today in Houston, Texas. And like, guys, like, like the longer it goes on, the more inexcusable it is that they're not being helped out or told.
Right. So then with that, what would you say as someone who, in a kind of joking way, but kind of serious, like you're a few weeks in the future from the rest of us potentially, like
Yeah.
what advice do you have for people?
I mean, I think I'm kind of straddling this line. There seems to be like two hard camps, unfortunately. You have the people that are like, it's just a flu, bro, don't worry about it, and complete apathy. And on the other extreme, there's the complete panic people saying like full military shutdown, everyone sealed in their homes, and like I think that's the other extreme, and I'm kind of right in the middle where it's like the social distancing is a good thing, and if you can get away with it with minimal damage to your own life, you should be doing it. You should be staying home, even if you are yourself not at risk. Think about the spread and how it might impact more vulnerable members of your community. It's that freaking simple. So just do that and don't fall into the it's just a flu bro trap and think like, oh, it can't possibly impact me. And I think as this spreads out, we're going to see that, unfortunately, even if you are like 20, 30, 40 something, you are at risk for this. It's just clobbering old people and unhealthier people more, but that doesn't mean you're out of the woods. And like, all the standard disclaimers apply. I'm not a doctor. I don't know any of this stuff. I'm not a PD. I don't know. I know no more about this than you, but I'm just seeing what's happening here. So I guess my advice to folks is, don't be too cavalier about it, but don't panic either. And just use some common sense. Like I didn't go into full hoarding mode, but I could see that this would trigger some panic in the coming days. And so what I did, I'm an early bird by nature anyway. So I just made sure I was going to the stores early in the morning on non-weekend days just to avoid any crowds. And also, like, you don't want to go to a grocery store under this situation on a weekend because everyone's in there. And you probably don't want to go on Monday morning because they haven't restocked yet. But if you just wait a day and go on like Tuesday morning at 5, 6 in the morning, you're fine. And hope that lasts. I think supply chain problems might cause that to be not the case. But for now, at least, that's how it is in Seattle. Supply chains are slowly, keeping up. Yeah. What else? Like it's what I'm seeing too is like I have friends that own businesses in the area and they are just getting shellacked by this. Like I got a buddy that owns a brewery, nice craft beer brewery, and he was right in the midst of an expansion effort where he had gone
Oh
from one
gosh.
he'd gone from one location to a second facility for production, and it was constructing a third tasting room location in a nice open area mall nearby. And so under normal, like 2 weeks ago, this was brilliant. Like he had grown his business over the years to a point where he was able to intelligently make that next leap and expand his business. And all of a sudden, it's turned out to be a horrible situation he's in, and he's screwed. And restaurants are in that boat too. I got another friend that owns 3 restaurants, and he's struggling to figure out how he can operate like this because I don't know if it's happening in Texas or not yet, but at least in New York and Washington and California, I believe so far, restaurants can't be open for sit down. They can only be takeout or delivery.
Right. That's how it is here.
Yeah, but like not every restaurant can really do that. If you're a pizza place, you're probably already set up for that. But if you're more of a sit down type restaurant and you don't really do a lot of that stuff, that's going to be a huge hit to your revenue. And also, restaurants make a ton of money off in-house liquor sales. That's a higher markup item. Just you're paying more if you get a drink at a restaurant, but that helps keep them in business. And all of a sudden, that's gone because no one's ordering a cocktail to go. So they just aren't drinking at restaurants anymore.
Yeah. So funny enough, Governor Abbott here in Texas, what's what I'm looking for? Loosened a lot of those
Restrictions.
alcohol regulations, right? So you can do the thing where you order when you order your to-go food, you can order beer and wine as well, and they can bring it to your car actually. So I think I think it still has to be sealed up, and you're not supposed to have it open in the vehicle still. But
Yeah.
I think you can. I think you can at least pick it up and take it home.
Like in a to-go cup, yeah.
Yeah. What else was I going to say? Something before that?
Other than that, I would just say prepare for life to get just different And so it's going to be different for every situation. Like for me, I'm like a middle-aged guy in the burbs with two kids in school. Other adult in the house is, an employed professional. She's home from work. I'm not going to dox her by name, but she works for
Nice.
HBO, and she works. Her team does the streaming. So if you watch HBO online, that's her team. And so she's actually one of the people in charge of HBO and Time Warner's response for employees. Like, how do we take care of our employees and make sure they can work at home, et cetera? And in the Seattle area, all the major tech employers, like Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Facebook's up here too. They're all telling employees to work from home. And the initial guidance was stay home until I think it was end of March. But now everyone's starting to whisper like, geez, there's no way we go back to work on April or even like end of April. They're saying June now. So I guess where I'm going with all this is like, watch Seattle, because we set in motion this thing where we're going into lockdown for basically 6 weeks. And that's looking more like 2-3 months, I think. And so that's going to have huge impacts on the economy. It's clobbering school for kids. And, what are you going to do about that? I don't know.
Yeah. What do you think are going to be, obviously you can't see the future, but like if you had to make predictions or guesses about the long-term impact, do you think there's going to be a big impact on things like people just deciding like, hey, I can do this homeschool thing? Or do you think it'll perpetuate or grow the work from home thing or the work remotely thing?
Yeah, I think to a certain extent, it's kind of funny. Like I'd been working from home to one degree or another for years. Like even when I was at Microsoft, I would work at home sometimes. And I worked for a company called Tableau Software, and it could work from home 1 or 2 days a week. And then my last job at Casa Whole, that was a 100% distributed company where everybody's working from home. So I think that's a glimpse of it. And what's kind of funny now is like Casa, we had it all figured out. Like there's pros and cons to working remote, but if everyone makes a conscious effort to work together and use the tools, it's pretty effective actually. And what I'm seeing now is other adult in my house, she is struggling with it because she is much more used to a traditional office environment, being able to quickly stop by and talk to somebody, in-person meetings, everything's face to face. And now she's having to like live like a shut-in, like me, and it's hard for her. But I think you're going to see more of that. I think schools are being caught off guard totally right here. They are struggling to figure out how to do, like, it's not homeschooling, it's distant learning. Like homeschooling is actually easier, I would think, because excuse me, like if you're homeschooling, you're 100% guiding the curriculum yourself, and you're figuring out what resources and lessons to put together, and so you're in charge of the schedule. But with distant learning, you're still waiting for like trusted third party central command, the school district or the teachers, to put together a curriculum, and they're emailing stuff to us and trying to figure out how best to make this work. And then I'm printing things out at home and working with the kids. And that sort of works, but it also assumes a lot of things. It assumes that there's an adult at home that can take the time to do all that with the kid. And in my situation, I'm able to do that because I'm fortunate enough to be able to survive without working for quite a while. Most parents aren't in that boat. And not only that, but like there's shocking, I know, but there are folks out there that don't have multiple computers at home just waiting to set up their kids to use. And so I do think that you'll see more people doing remote or homeschooling, but I don't think that we as a society are any way set up to do it at scale quickly.
Yeah, that's so we're kind of dealing with that too, of like having to adjust, like you said. In some ways you go, it might be easier to do homeschooling because then I could have days where I say, hey, we're gonna, we can cram this amount of learning into a smaller time frame. Now we're still, for us, one of the things that we're kind of noticing is some people, because the school's still trying to do things on the schedule they had before all this, right? And so
exactly,
different grade levels are taking breaks for, say, lunch at different times. Well, that's based on, normally they have a shared resource of the cafeteria, right? That they've got to cycle these different grade levels through. You don't have that at home.
Nope.
Right. But if my family has multiple kids, that now I'm having to provide lunch for my different kids at different time frames, that doesn't make sense for me at the home.
Of course not. Yeah.
So the schools will kind of have to work through that, and I wonder if there will be people who next year go, look, it would just be easier if I set this thing myself.
Yeah, especially if you have a parent that can be at home doing that. And
Yeah,
I think for families in that situation, I think homeschooling is going to become much more attractive after this. Like, I don't
yeah,
know how old your kids are, but I got one in preschool and one in fourth grade. Now, those are two different levels of curriculums. And oh man, it's like when you got one teacher, and the teachers are all operating as best they can. I don't fault them at
yeah,
all.
yeah, yeah. Nobody's faulting the teachers. There was no
Yeah,
way they.
yeah,
Yeah,
they're not set up to be successful here, so everyone's just trying to do the best they can. But it's hard all around, and at the same time, you just got to step back and relax and go like, everyone's going to be fine here. I mean, no one's going to miss out on some getting into college opportunity. I don't think because these couple months are a little wonky with their education. So I'm trying to like correctly scale my amount of stress about the schooling piece. Because like
yeah,
I know they're learning stuff, and hey, shocking, Dad knows things that aren't being taught in school, and I'm showing them stuff too. So they're learning cool things.
yeah. Well, cool, man. All right. Well, any parting words for the listeners out there?
No, just I mean, I think that people that are going through this in their towns now are probably at a higher stress level than I am right now. Only because I think I've had a chance to kind of like digest it and get through it and realize like, okay, let's just don't lose your cool. Let's just keep going. And so I see the panic and the stress levels rising among like people I'm following on Twitter, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember feeling that stressed out too. And I guess my advice is just like, just kind of chill out. It's gonna suck. We'll get through it. It's gonna suck. We'll get through it. Just keep saying that to yourself, and you'll be all right.
All right, awesome. Well, thanks for your time, Brian. I really appreciate it.
Sure thing, man. Good luck. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. Stay safe out there.
Thanks.
All right, so next I've got Josh up. Josh is from New York. He is involved with the New York Bitcoin scene. He helps with the or kind of puts on the Bitcoin beefsteaks and is involved with Matt and Evan Kalutis doing the cold card meetups as well. Josh, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you're still in the city as of right now, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So what are things like there on the ground?
I feel like they're running at 20%. Like it's not a ghost town for sure, but it's much quieter. There's less planes flying overhead. There's less honking. There's less cars. There's just less people walking by. I haven't been on the subway, but a bus drives by my house all day, every day, and it's typically full of people, and now it'll have one or two people on it. So it seems like people are staying home, kind of sticking to the social distancing.
Yeah, that's crazy. I guess a little about a year ago, last May, I was there in New York, and it's a fun city, but it's so busy usually, and
Yeah.
it's very different to try and picture like an empty bus driving down the street there.
It's a little spooky.
Yeah. So kind of give me your timeline. Like when did this stuff really start ramping up for you guys?
It's a little hard. It's a little hard, as you might be able to relate. It's a little hard to distinguish between like the panic of crypto Twitter and Telegram groups and like reality.
Sure.
If we were judging solely on toilet paper, I would say like the shit was probably hitting the fan last Monday.
Okay.
But if we were judging in terms of like people actually taking action, like closing schools and staying home from school, that didn't really start to happen until last Friday. And then, so last Friday we stayed home. That was our first day staying home. And we've sort of been in our house since last Friday.
Okay. Yeah. That seems to be consistent with what, like a few days advanced of what we're doing here, which would make sense because you've got a much higher population density, and I think there were cases in New York probably before there were here in Texas.
Yeah. Just in terms of people storing stuff. You know, a lot of apartments are like 1,200 square feet. You can't buy a month's worth of food and supplies, and there's no place to put it.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
good point.
which is something that I fear sort of disguises our need for supplies, because people will think that they're stocked up, and authorities might think that we're stocked up. I don't know. I can't go down like the conspiracy road and what people will think. It's just, I don't know. It's crazy times.
So, have you seen any kind of like um, law enforcement enforcing these rules?
No, the only thing I've seen so far is uh, the mayor canceled alternate side parking, which is a big source of revenue for the city. Alternate side parking is, for those people who aren't New Yorkers, it means that like every couple of days throughout the course of the week, you have to move your car from one side to the other for street cleaners to come through. It's a huge pain in the butt, and the mayor has paused it. Um, but for the city, it's a big source of revenue, because anybody that forgets to move their car, or anyone from out of town that doesn't know to move their car, gets a ticket. And so they're not doing those tickets. So now all those guys are just sweeping up and down the street looking for reasons to ticket people. That's the only law enforcement I've seen.
Hmm.
And they're just like checking licenses and making sure cars are up to date. It's a little bit frustrating to see.
Yeah. So, what? Because you guys don't have things like, I know that we've got these big supermarkets, we've got Sam's and places like that. What is what does normally it look like for you guys to get groceries and things like that?
Um, so I'm a chef, so what I'm about to describe to you is probably not what the average New Yorker is doing. I kind of surf around from store to store for different reasons. I'll often go to Whole Foods, which is probably like a 20-minute drive from me. It's in a nicer neighborhood than from where I live. And Whole Foods is very picked over. And the people who are shopping there are very tense. But it's like a Whole Foods, it's like big. It has a parking lot. I drive there. Down like around the corner from where I live, the situation's pretty different. It's a little bit more stock. They're out of bread. They're out of flour. But a lot of stuff like canned goods and fish and sardines and the more shelf-stable foods, pastas, they're all still there. And they're not at Whole Foods, 10 minutes away for sure. So you see that it's like pickings are slim, but there's still stuff on the shelves for sure.
Gotcha. So that's always weird to me. It's like because that was kind of my experience too. I went to the grocery store and it's like, there's all this canned food still left. Why why are people not buying the canned food? That's the stuff that's going to last if you need it to. But
yeah, maybe they already bought that. I mean, that's what my story is. Like, I go to the store and I'm like, I got that canned food a month ago.
Oh, okay.
Now I'm here for broccoli, and now's the time when it's like a pain in the butt to just run to the store because you don't have something.
Right, exactly.
Everybody else is like going crazy. But what you were about to ask a question. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, you're fine. I was just gonna ask, with you being a chef, like, what does that look like for you work-wise right now?
Oh, the calendar is clear. For me and everyone I know and everyone that they know that works in the industry, it's just the restaurants have shut down. Every event company has canceled all of their events. We do jobs for these philanthropies, big philanthropic organizations. It's like all that stuff is just wiped off the board indefinitely. And I am super fortunate not to be in a situation where I'm living hand to mouth, but a lot of these people are, and a lot of their employees are. So it's gonna get rough. It's one of my big worries about it. It's gonna get rough. People are gonna get desperate, where they're not yet. It's scary.
Yeah, I think the actual what am I trying to say here? The actual impact of the virus itself and the health attack. Excuse me. It's just allergies. I'm not sick, y'all.
Bless
The I think that's gonna, not to downplay it, not to pretend like it's nothing, but I don't think it's gonna be near what the economic impact of the social distancing and the work from home and the shelter at home orders are gonna have. And I'm not even saying we shouldn't do the social distancing thing. I think it's wise, but it's very concerning, and it kind of reveals the fragile nature of the systems we've put in place.
Yeah, and how close to the edge we are and have been for so long. I mean, just that these giant companies don't have a cushion to operate for 3 weeks is nuts to me. I mean, I would imagine, yeah, I don't know. I just compare the status of my own company, like how far am I from whatever the equivalent of someone in my position would be to turning to the government for a bailout. I'm a very long ways from it because of how I structured my company, and I just save and stack sats as we all try to do. But that there's a giant corporation with thousands or even millions of employees that can't survive 3 weeks without revenue is mind blowing to me.
Yeah, I don't know. Is that just something that, in order to stay competitive, you just run that line so hard to stay up with your competitors that you, and because the
Yeah,
supply and demand was there, it allowed you to do that for so long? Or
the other, I mean, I wouldn't. I don't say that to fault the companies. I don't think I could fault the company. It's just the nature of the beast, At the risk of sounding like putting my tinfoil hat on, like these guys are legally obligated to do everything they can in their power to make money for their investors. And if they're found to not be doing that, investors can sue them and replace them. So
yeah,
they just, that's the model that everybody's working from. And that's the flaw. Not the, it is flawed that the companies do that, but that's the reason they do it, in my opinion.
yeah, it's a system with some screwy incentives.
Yeah, but that is not my expertise. I can't speak to that very much. I just, yeah, I don't know.
So what do you see as like going forward from here? I mean, I'm not I'm not really asking for like medical
Yeah,
advice or like how you would run the world, but like,
I'm just, my silence is just me thinking about it. I think it's like
yeah,
a a big part of this tension that everybody's feeling. It's just from uncertainty. Like there's so much we don't know. We don't know about the coronavirus, how it spreads, how we're gonna fix it. You know, Everybody's staying home. It's not easy. There's no end in sight to it. The, like the stock market is falling apart. It's While coronavirus is a terrible thing, it's not entirely clear why all the weird things that are happening in the markets are happening, and there's no end in sight to it. There's no like we're going to fix this, because the uncertainty cloud of coronavirus is just hanging over everything. So I feel like, for me, like in the mind, your question of what's the future hold, I feel like there's like these kind of like milestones that I put out in my head, of like, well, if I'm in my house for another month, I'm probably going to like pack up our stuff and my cat and like go to my parents' house. What happens if New York goes on lockdown? What happens if my neighborhood becomes dangerous because people are getting desperate? Like there's just so many things that we don't know. Try to be prepared for. I have no idea. Or it could just pass, and in June everybody's having parties again, and like everything kind of starts to click back into place. I don't know. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts?
Yeah,
What
no,
are
I don't
your
know. I
thoughts
was
on
sitting
it?
here listening to you and I'm like, I don't know because and I think it's
That's the
good to kind of
uncertainty.
consider.
Yeah.
Go ahead. What?
I mean, that's the uncertainty. I think it's like it's
Right,
just
right. And I think it's good to consider these different possibilities, but you got to be careful that you don't like obsess over them, right? Because it's not good for our mental health to just
yeah,
um, play them out endlessly. But it's like you got to consider, okay, what happens if you get to the point where and consider that there are other people that are worse off from us that are going to get to the point of desperation faster.
yeah,
What do they do in that circumstance? How can we help other people who may be not in as good a place as us without, you know, making ourselves and our families vulnerable and doing so without, uh, you know, creating a system of dependence. We don't want to, make other people dependent upon us and create some kind of weird paternalistic power structure there either.
yeah,
And and then what do you do if they um if they say like you can't go somewhere, like that's not going to go well. But
yeah,
then again, like you say, if this is kind of the here's what's hard for me is I go, if this works, right? And by June, July, we see the number of hospitalizations and stuff taper off, and this actually works well, there won't be a good way to distinguish whether it was overhyped or whether it worked well.
yeah. I mean,
Right? And so there's going to be those people that say, "Oh, this was totally overblown. It was never a big deal."
yeah, but that's at the
And
crux.
you'll have no like hard concrete way of distinguishing whether it was like, "Oh yeah, this was totally overblown and they put us all on lockdown for no reason," versus like, "No, it actually did exactly what we hoped it would do."
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that is like I am with you 100%. That is at the crux of judging. It's so hard to judge whether or not prevention is working.
Right.
Because either
Because you
it's
have
not
nothing to compare
working.
it to.
Yeah, either it's not working. Yeah, um, and you know we're also in that situation now. Like we could have done a lot more to prevent it than we did, and maybe we wouldn't have the problem we're facing right now. And people would be saying, "And you guys did all that crazy shit, and we're fine." Like it just works at every stage of the game. Prevention starts to look bad when it starts to work well.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to put it. I mean, it's like going to the gym. It's like you go to the gym and then you live to be 99. You're like, I hated going to the gym. I don't know that it helped me live this long.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's crazy and it's not easy.
Are you aware of any like any good groups or organizations doing things in your area, or ways that people can help other people out?
Uh, my yes, I do. My wife runs a scholarship foundation called Scholarship Plus, and they help low income kids from New York City go to colleges, and it's actually a really awesome program. And a lot of those kids, when they lived in New York City, were living below the poverty line, and now all their schools have shut down, and they have no place to go, and they have no food. So my wife's job has been working around the clock in the last 2 weeks to try to help these kids find ways to get food, which is getting harder and harder, and find places to live. Um, so I haven't set it up yet, but I might set up like a little BTC pay server where people could donate to them, because they're in a situation where like every little bit helps.
Yeah, you should definitely do that. And then let me know if you get that done.
Yeah, I will.
And
I will.
I'll blast that out.
Josh, what are things like in your neighborhood? Like, how are stores there, and how are people there? Like, do people seem tense?
Um, some people are a little tense. It's weird. Um, I haven't really gone into any stores in a few days. We went by like we've changed, all of our grocery shopping and anything. Like we have Sam's, which is kind of like a Costco here, but we order online and then just go like, one person jump out of the car, go in and pick up the order and come back out to the car kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
We're more suburb and stores have parking lots kind of thing, which is different from where you're at in New York City.
Yeah.
Um, it's not a lot of mass transit. It's not a lot of walking or biking. So it's a lot of you drive in your own vehicle places. And so because things are more spread out and because it was longer before we had any confirmed cases here, I think things are just definitely slower. And um, Texas just tends to be less like heavy hand of government than New York
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
statewide in a lot of ways. And so now at the same time, like I think people going down in droves to South Padre for spring break is idiotic. Like this is stupid. Miami, I think, is the same way. I saw in the news. People are just like can't fathom that something bad would happen to them. So they're just
Yeah.
like, well, it doesn't affect me. I'm just going to go live my life anyway. And it's like,
Yeah.
your action, as much as a, free market, let people do what they want as long as they're not hurting somebody else kind of mindset that I tend to have. At the same time, I'm like, you should consider how your actions do affect other people, because especially when you've got something like this, like I'm not saying we should have mandatory like police enforced quarantines, but and I work in healthcare too, so that affects it. But I'm just like, you need to consider how your everyday actions affect infection of those around you.
Yeah. Yeah. First,
So,
do no harm, right? It's like,
yeah,
it's a hard thing.
and I think people just don't consider how their action, and it's hard. It's hard when it's not a tangible thing. Like you're talking about a virus, which is not visible, right? It's not like you've got orange sludge on your hands that you can see everywhere you wipe it. But
Yeah. You were just talking about how there's more space there. Like, well, sometimes we go visit my father-in-law in Colorado, and I just think about like it's almost like a matter of physics. It's like space. Like if we were atoms, there's people are able to be more spread out, so there's less pressure. Like it's almost atmospheric. Like you raise an elevation, and there's more space, and people can be further apart. And then you come down to New York at sea level, and it's like the density of New York, just the physics of people being close together leads to pressure. And it's like, yeah, the resources here are the valve, and having any of that valve plugged would just be a terrible, terrible thing. Do I sound like a crazy, like, worrier?
no, I don't think so. I think you're expressing what a lot of people are feeling, and so I think it's good that I don't know that it's beneficial to sit here and like dwell on our worry, but I think it is good to at least say it out loud sometimes and just like acknowledge like these are real concerns, these are real fears, and now like, and then I think we have to say like, okay, how realistic are each of these scenarios, and then you do what you can and what makes sense for you and your family for each of those scenarios, or the ones that are most likely. And then, at some point there at some level we can't control it. Right.
Yeah.
And so, for me, I can't speak for anybody else, but for me, that's where I just have to take it to God and go like, I'm not in control, and trust that he's in control. But, like there's a certain point where we can't control what goes on around us, and we do what we can to help protect us and protect our family and protect our neighbors if we can, and help out those that we can. But no, I think you're right. I think it is good to at least voice these things, because I think the other thing is too, like some people have these concerns, but then they think they're the only ones. Right. And it's good to hear that other people have these concerns as well. It makes you feel less crazy.
Yeah, for sure. Also, I haven't I haven't done much articulating of the questions that you're asking me. Like while I've thought about them, I haven't written down what I think the answers should be or will be, and I haven't said them out loud. So saying them out loud kind of like it's almost like you step back from yourself and think, wow, not only is this causing a lot of tension in me, it's some serious stuff that I'm thinking about. Like you kind of need to let go of it, but be prepared.
Yeah.
I don't know what else you can do. And also having children for me adds a lot of pressure to it because I
For sure.
make a lot better decisions for them than I do for myself.
Right.
And that just goes for everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have to consider the effect that it has on your family for every decision that you make. Whereas someone who's not, in some ways is freer to make certain decisions because they don't have to worry about the repercussions, the consequences on their kids. But it also does, like you said earlier, like, and that's probably why you and I consider these things more than like partiers down running out into the ocean, right?
Yeah.
Because they don't have tiny lives depending on them. So, they're only thinking in this moment, like what is good for me in this moment, not, okay, how does this affect me? How does this affect my kids? How does this affect my parents or grandparents?
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, no, it's hard not to be a little bit jealous of that mentality, It's like
Yeah.
just being carefree.
Right. Yeah, I'm the same way. Like I go back and forth, right? Like there's a part of me that's like, I wish I was more carefree, but at the same time, I see the consequences of those actions, and I'm like, nah, I don't know that that's worth it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it's not worth it. And, that's part of what Bitcoin reveals to us in thinking about it, I think.
What, that like actions actually have consequences?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to be like, I hate to be the dude that like references the Bitcoin standard, but it's just about time preference, It's just about like, why would you pay $12 today for something that you can have for $10 tomorrow? Just wait until tomorrow. Yeah. Get it for $10.
Well, and I know that sometimes it feels like we're all sitting around here quoting the Bitcoin standard, and it's not that. It's a good book. Don't get me wrong. I think it's really good, and I think everyone should read it. But It's not like that hard of a concept, right? What he says in there, on some level, just kind of boils down to understanding the marshmallow experiment. Like, if you can explain it in the form of the marshmallow experiment, where it's like, here's a marshmallow on this plate, I'm going to walk away for 10 minutes. You can either eat this marshmallow now, or if I come back in 10 minutes and this marshmallow is still here, I'll get you a second one. Like, if you can make people grasp that concept, that's kind of the central thing, and then everything else just kind of comes out of this understanding of like high time preference and low time preference, and we've these systems, these fragile systems that we're talking about, a lot of them happen because we've kind of pushed the actual consequences of having a high time preference off onto these other externalities that we don't see anymore, right? We push it away to where we don't see it somewhere, either in the form of debt that we just pretend isn't there, or taxes, right? And we just, oh, well, that's just taxes, right? But because it doesn't come out of our, because it doesn't come out like in a byline, like explaining what each of these things is for or whatever, we just don't see it.
Yeah.
Right.
An itemized bill.
Out of sight, out of mind. So we don't think about it. And,
or maybe it's even described in a way that we don't mind. And I feel like that's the worst of all evils. It's just like, whatever. It's just a tax on life. But yeah, I'm with you. I 100% agree. Though my problem with the marshmallow study, which I've never like read the paper of the marshmallow study, but that second marshmallow in the scenario they described, the second marshmallow is guaranteed. And in life, I feel like it's not always guaranteed. Like maybe they did some sort of triangle experiment in that experiment where you have one marshmallow. If you wait 10 minutes, there's a 50% chance I'll come back with a second marshmallow.
Oh yeah, that's a good point, right? Because in law, yeah, your returns aren't guaranteed.
Yeah, and returns are not guaranteed. And that goes back to just what's the solution to that? I think the solution is just like acceptance. Like you do need to find contentment and find a way, like not find, but at least look for a way to be happy. Well, dude, I don't know. Are we good? Should we keep going? We're done.
No. I mean, I think we've kind of gone over things. You kind of given us a picture of what it's like there in New York and kind of what the feeling is. Hopefully things go well, and in a month and a half from now, we're going, well, did it work, or did we like make a bigger deal out of this than we needed to?
Yeah. I mean, if that's the problem we have at the end of this whole thing, that we wonder if we did too much, that's a good problem to have.
Yeah, I think that's a good problem to have, wondering if we did too much, assuming that we don't go into some like full authoritarian lockdown. My biggest concern on that front is just like that I don't feel like we've been given any real criteria for lifting these things. And that always kind of concerns me when the government says, oh, this is a temporary whatever, but they don't have any criteria for when that temporary time frame is over.
Just meaning sort of where does it end?
Yeah. Like, I mean, not to go full political here, but like something like the never-ending wars in the Middle East, right? Like, yeah, there was no clear like end goal in mind when we went in. I say we, I just mean the U.S. government. When the U.S. government went into Afghanistan and went into Iraq, there was no clear goal or clear strategy. And, here we are, 18, 19 years later, and we're just now considering like treaties to pull out with Al-Qaeda.
Yeah.
Or Taliban, whichever.
Yeah, and it's hard. Yeah. It's one of those things. It's not. Yeah, I'm with you 100%. It's hard to talk to a veteran and not get angry about that too.
Yeah.
Because it all sounds so futile. But yeah, definitely. I'm with you 100%. I mean, that's the other thing. In addition to New York being like a high density, high stress area, it's also really expensive here. And to the thousands of restaurant workers that lost their jobs, $1,000 or $1,200 or whatever it's going to be check from the government, it's going to last 2 weeks. As long as people are having to pay rent, it's just not going to last very long. And
right.
That leads to a mortgage freeze and probably a rent freeze, which are like things that have been getting kicked around. And I did see today that Cuomo did something to the effect of, you can't default on your mortgage. Do you know anything about that, or have you heard anything about that? Oh, you can't evict tenants. There's no eviction until June or something like that. I'm sorry, I don't know more about
that. So then obviously you're not one, you're a chef, but like if you're a landlord, what do you do? Right? Because I know that there's a lot of people who hate the idea of landlords. Sorry for you, but the landlord owns the property. You're living on their property, but like.
So I do own my house.
Right. So, but I mean, you're not like a landlord, right? Like you don't own a bunch of apartment buildings, right?
I'm not a landlord, but we do have a tenant. We do have another apartment in our home that we rent to a tenant.
Gotcha.
So I'm technically a landlord.
Yeah, you are. Okay.
But I'm not a slumlord.
Right. Sure. But I mean, and I guess probably there's some gray imaginary line there. And some people are nicer about it than others. And certainly like in a situation like this, there is if you start evicting people, what's to say you're going to you're going to find other tenants anyway. So
Oh,
I don't know that,
yeah. Oh, it's crazy.
but like they've got to eat too.
Yeah, I mean, it's a house of cards. There's no question. It's like you can't, like, if us being able to pay our mortgage depends on us getting our uh, rent checks from our tenants. And if that's stopped for 4 months, I don't know. That's the main thing that's like personally I'm worried about. It's like I don't know what would happen to us. I don't think we wouldn't like default on our mortgage, but it would be very hard for us. But then at the same time, going in the other direction, if there was a mortgage freeze, it would be sort of a terrible thing to do to not pass those savings on to our tenant.
Yeah.
So the sword cuts both ways.
Yeah, for sure. Well, all right. I wish, unfortunately, it's not like we can always solve the world's problems in 30 minutes, but,
We try. We do what we can on a Friday afternoon.
Yeah, we do what we can, and we just do what we can to be prepared for tomorrow, and to hopefully people can, who can help each other out. And you'll send me the link for that organization that your wife works with, and we'll put it in the show notes and make sure that people are able to, if they can, help there. So,
all right, I'll do it.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate your time.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stay healthy, man. Be well.
Thanks. Stay safe.
Yeah. Bye.
All right, Marshall, welcome.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about this. From my understanding, you're working on helping 3D print some reusable masks for in preparation of kind of an anticipated shortage of masks for this whole COVID thing.
Yeah, that's right. And it's actually not even anticipated. I had a phone call with the director of health and safety for Mass General, which is probably
big hospital.
It's probably one of the biggest and one of the top. And he told me today actually that they're already short. Because the only reason you use an N95 mask particularly is for basically if somebody has tuberculosis.
Right.
So, I mean, they already don't have a lot on hand. And when you do use them, you immediately toss them after every patient. So they burn through them when they do have them. So he said that, when they do run out, because he's projecting they will run out, that they're going to need some kind of alternative. And the CDC was recommending scarves. And he said that he was positive that people could figure out something better than a scarf when they are 100% out of masks. So on Monday, me and another guy are going to present him with a few prototypes that we have made this week. And he's going to pick one, and hopefully with some back and forth and some iterative design, we can come up with something that will be better than a scarf or nothing. But of course, it's still to only use in an absolutely worst case scenario disaster. So I want to make that very clear. A lot of people have said, there's no way that thing's going to be safe compared to an N95, and that's true. Those are regulated and certified and tested, and this is just for when they are 100% left with nothing else. What can we provide our health workers? And that's kind of the train of thought here.
Yeah, and so just to be clear, because I work in healthcare, and I was talking to another person earlier today, and we were talking about how this, like, just like you said, right? Like N95s normally are only used in cases of tuberculosis. We're coming off the end of flu season right now, and I can just tell you from me personally, and like at our hospital, we don't use hardly any N95s normally, and even just because of the being at the tail end of flu season, we were already kind of low on surgical procedural masks, right? Uh, so this is something that will be good because you're talking about a big hospital, right? And I work at a much smaller hospital. It's not like a tiny hospital, but it's a smaller hospital for sure than Mass General. And this is just not something that normally you would anticipate and be able to prepare for and ramp up that purchase of N95s or even surgical procedure masks.
Yeah, and he said that all of the 3M masks are made in China, and
Oh
they
gosh.
already ran through all their stockpiles. So they're ramping up production again, and he said that he's not allowed to order them. Like, he called 3M, and they were like, "Sorry,
Wow.
we're literally manufacturing as fast as we can." And your hospital is one of many in the state, and which is one of many in the country, which is one of many other countries. So, they're frontlining places like Italy and Iran, Korea, still a lot in China. So he's got a long lead time for masks as they do become available. So he's trying to make sure that his exact words were, "I don't think it's a good idea to turn away any idea." So he's surveying all options from even, making some out of cloth. And so, yeah, we're going to try to help any way we can.
Sure. So give us kind of an explanation of this mask. Like, how does it work? What is it made out of? How much of it is 3D printed? How long does it take to print? Those kind of things.
Sure. So we're currently circling around 2 prototypes. One looks actually very similar to like a fitted N95 with like the nose shape. It kind of looks like a Bane mask, to be honest, from Batman. And the whole thing is 3D printed. There is an opening where you can put a filter. And so the filtration that we have been suggested to use is MERV 13, MERV 13. And that's basically like a high quality air conditioning filter. Additionally, it's very similar to like a HEPA filter. You can just shove a HEPA filter into this thing. I just pulled it off the printer about 30 minutes ago. And to be honest, with a little bit of thermoforming, it makes a pretty good seal. So I'm hoping that this is a step in the right direction, at least. The other one we have was originally made by a company called Copper 3D, and it is a mask. So the first one that I described, it takes a long time to print. It takes 8 hours. Could be sped up a bit, I think, but the other one takes about 3 hours to print. However, it requires more kind of heat forming around your face. And it is 100% 3D printed, with the exception of 2 small little cutouts for a filter. And so we're going to take those 2, and there's 3 or 4 other designs that some people from Cambridge are going to be bringing to the meeting, and I haven't seen those yet. So, and there's new people online every day that are submitting really cool ideas. One guy had an idea. He said, "Hey, look, 3D printing's slow, but I have a vacuum forming factory. And
nice.
Once you guys get some designs that work, we can bang out thousands per minute." And I was like, "Okay, great." So that'll be something we bring up to the guys at MGH for sure to see if that's a viable option. So, yeah, we got all kinds of options in front of us. We'll see what sticks.
And so just to be clear, when you talk about thermoforming, in case there's people out there who aren't familiar with 3D printing, the mask prints more or less flat from what I've seen. And then you take like a heat gun or a hair dryer and kind of reheat it up, and you can kind of bend that shape into place around your face, right?
Yeah, so that's one of the models that we're testing. The other one, it prints as a shape, but if you could heat it up a little bit, you can get an even better seal. So I think the one that you've seen is I'm almost very certain that it's the same one that we're going to be showing Mass General. And that one has a lot of heat forming involved, a lot. This other one does take longer, but there's very little heat forming involved. It's just a bit to kind of customize the fit a little bit. So, yeah.
Cool. And so what kind of material? I know there's various materials out there, ABS, PLA, whatever, different kinds of plastics. What are you printing these things with?
Yeah, so a lot of people have suggested there's a Copper 3D actually makes an antimicrobial PLA. They call it PLX Active or something like that. However, there's no way that's going to be mass available for the world, right? I'm not just making this for mass. We're going to try to get a really good design and then just release it. Of course, with the caveat of people saying, this doesn't replace an N95. This is a worst case scenario type thing. So these are being made right now with PLA. A lot of people have PLA. And, after this entire crisis is over, it's biodegradable. So if people just chuck them in a landfill or whatever, it's not a big deal. So that's kind of, we don't want to make it out of ABS or nylon specifically, just because eventually we'll get through this. And if a 3D mask does help out a lot, there's going to be thousands of these things littering everywhere, right? So we're trying to be a little bit of environmentally conscious. And PLA is the cheapest option too. So back of the envelope numbers for both of these prototypes is about cost of material wise between $1 and $5 each. To my knowledge, that's cheaper than an N95. So, I think PLA for now is fine. Of course, there's all kinds of concerns about, giving people a false sense of security in the hospital, et cetera, et cetera. So we want to make sure that people know for sure that this is not a replacement for anything. This is simply, we're trying to get something that's better than you going with nothing.
Right. Yeah, because like you said, the other option is people are just going to be wrapping a scarf around their face.
Yeah.
And so how difficult is it to get, or what does it cost for when you're talking about the filtration material?
Yeah, the filtration material that we are scouting, and again, MGH hasn't said yes or no to this, but it's you can just go on Amazon and type MERV space 13 filter, and you will see tons of prime available shipments of these filters. Again, I don't know if that's the right call or not, but I do know that everybody in their house probably has an AC filter, and worst case scenario, you can just rip that thing out and use it. So that MERV 13 seems to be very prevalent right now. With a few layers of that, that's probably going to be good. But again, I'm not a doctor. I don't know any of this technical stuff. We're just trying to fish around for something that folks think will work.
Gotcha. And how are y'all testing these, or has there been any? Besides just like face shape, is there a way that you're testing the filtering ability?
Yeah, so there's not been any kind of test that I've done. However, I do know that the N95 fitment test is, from what I was described to me, is basically they'll put an N95 mask on you to test the fitting of it, and they will put this kind of like acrylic box around your head basically, and then they'll put drops of this fruity smelling, I think it's phenol, into the box, and they just have you breathe normally. And they say if you can smell the fruitiness in the air, then the mask is not a good fit. So there is a standardized way of testing these things. We've not done that yet. Again, I just pulled this off the printer 30 minutes ago. So MGH did say that they're going to do some kind of tinkering and fiddling with it on Monday with us to see kind of how close we can get things, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, we're gonna try to get close for sure.
Yeah, that's nicer than the than the way they've tested them on us. It's usually it's not a sweet or fruity smelling stuff. It's like this really bitter tasting stuff. You'll know if you don't have a good fit on it. They put a hood over you. They put the mask on you. They put a hood over you, and they squirt this mist into the air, and you taste it pretty quick if it's not a good fit. So
Yeah, so hopefully I'm not the guinea pig for that.
Yeah. It won't make you puke or anything. It's a nasty taste in your mouth.
Okay.
So
Right on.
all right, well, cool. So you said Monday you're going to Mass General. Are there things that other people can do to help out in the design or testing process or resources or anything like that?
Yeah, so I think there's a few things. The first thing is I'm always open, and everybody's open for more designs, right? The more options that I can show these people, the better. Um, we presented them with some 3D renderings over emails yesterday, and the ones that they said that they liked are kind of the I think it's called FFP2 style, kind of the N95, but like a shaped around your face style. Um, so any kind of variant or something that will make it, print faster or whatever, those are all good things. I would suggest people go to endcoronavirus.org. There's a Slack channel there, and a lot of people are contributing excellent things there. And people can learn from there. People can submit whatever they need from there. It's a really great resource.
Very cool. Well, I want to be considerate of your time, Marshall, and so I won't keep you too much longer. We'll check out. You said endcoronavirus.org.
That's right.
And then there's a Telegram channel as well where you're releasing information on these masks, correct?
Yeah. So my Telegram channel, it is simply a place to kind of let people know what I've been told. I want to make it very clear. It's not a place for people to feel that I have some kind of magical design that will save them from coronavirus. The reality is this might be worse. I don't know. What I do know is there's not a central repository for people to get print files. And so that's the main reason. Again, there's disclaimers all over the channel. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not a doctor. I don't know anything about healthcare. I'm just an engineer who's trying to make some cool stuff. And if it's helpful for somebody, that's all I care about. But yeah, there is that channel. And the link for that, pull that up for you here, it's t.me/open source mask. That's it. And, even if this wasn't a pandemic time, an open source mask that's readily printable is really cool. If you're in a dusty environment. One of my plumber buddies messaged me and he said he's dealing with a lot of dusty areas in Texas right now. And he said, I literally work in a field by myself. I'm not worried about getting the virus, but I would love a mask that I can just slap on to, make sure I'm not coughing my lungs up at night. So, there's always benefit for this kind of stuff with or without any kind of pandemic.
Right. Well, you got to consider there's people who work not even in healthcare, but people who work in environments with a lot of debris that normally use N95s in their everyday work. And now that everything's been bought up, they're probably having a hard time finding stuff for their work too. So this can benefit more than just healthcare.
For sure.
All right, man. Well, how can any other ways that people can keep up with what you're doing?
Yeah, my Twitter's always available. It's at OGBTC. And I keep all my updates pretty fresh from there.
Very cool. Well, thank you for your time, Marshall. Good luck, and hope everything goes well on Monday.
Thanks so much.
All right. I hope you guys enjoyed that and gave you kind of a taste of a couple of different things and how things are looking in various places. Like I said, here in Texas, it's a little slower than the other places, especially where I'm at, because it's not metropolitan. I've heard in bigger cities, there's a little more, some places are panicked or some places are very on edge. I would say that it's not nothing, but it's not the end of the world. And there are people who are hurting, and there are people who really need help, but the world is not totally collapsing around us. I hope you guys are doing well. And, if you've got a different perspective on things, if you've got, if your job or your hobbies or something you're working on gives you a different perspective, reach out. I'd love to highlight that. I hope this helps. I hope this doesn't add to anybody's anxiety. And that's kind of why I put the story with Marshall at the end, just because I want to end on a note of hope. It's always good to have hope in these times and something to look forward to, because the world is crazy out there and we can't control everything. We like to think that maybe we could, but the truth is we can't. We can make the best of what we've got. You guys go give Brian and Josh and Marshall a follow. Brian is at Brian Lockhart on Twitter. Josh is at Away Slice. And I'm sure he'd be happy to talk to you about putting on a beefsteak once all of this is over. And then Marshall is at OGBTC. So follow them, keep up with their work. I put links to the End Coronavirus and the Marshall's Telegram channel in the show notes. And then if Josh sends me a link to that site for his wife's organization, I'll put that in there as well. And when he sends me that, I'll tweet that out as well. So, you guys look for those things, follow those things. If you need help or you know someone who needs help, reach out to me, reach out on Twitter. We need to help each other. Check in on your neighbors, check in on your family, see how they're doing. If there's things that you can do to help. And on that note, I'm going to leave you with some wise words from Fred Rogers with via a track from Akira the Dawn. And I hope you enjoy it.
My mother used to say a long time ago, whenever there would be any really catastrophe that was in the movies or on the air, she would say, always look for the helpers. There will always be helpers. She would say, always look for the helpers. There will always be helpers, even just on the sidelines. That's why I think that if news programs could make a conscious effort of showing rescue teams, of showing medical people, anybody who is coming into a place where there's a tragedy, to be sure that they include that. Because if you look for the helpers, you'll know that there's hope.